I was emailing with a client today who is in the great state of Oklahoma who keeps experiencing neck discomfort, particularly when she is getting out of bed in the morning. She thinks it really gets overactive at night. And when sitting, although when she's up and moving, it feels pretty good. So I had her working on expanding her right chest wall. So if you know what the right brachial chain pattern is, the right BC pattern, and up into the neck, it's all this right side musculature. And I was talking specifically about the right chest wall, feeling a stretch through the right chest wall. And she wrote back and she said the technique was great, but she felt it more in the right abdominals. And she was wondering if that was correct. And yes, it is. So I just want to show you the amount of, it's sometimes hard for people to even understand, the amount of musculature that gets overactive in this right BC pattern throughout your whole right side of the chest, and then up into the neck for some people, and then even for other people, up into the right jaw muscles and up into the cranium itself with the temporalis muscle. So I'm gonna just narrate this so you're gonna see the picture. And this is from a program. So the first picture you're gonna see is the right abdominals. So you got the right abdominals, you've got the right intercostals, so all those muscles between each rib. So when the right side gets tight, the ribs internally rotate in the right BC pattern, your weight is over to the right, your pelvis comes forward on the left, orients your pelvis to the right. The right rib cage and the right pelvis end up closer together. They're screwing, no wait, yeah, okay, they're kind of screwing on top of each other, just come closer, let's just put it that way, closer on the right side. So everything is getting tight. The right abdominals between the pelvis and the rib cage, tight. That's what you see there. You see the right, that would be the right internal obliques. Then you have the right intercostals between each rib, and that's pain. Those muscles can be really painful when they get pulled or stretched or torn. It's terrible. So every time you take a breath, it's just insanely painful. Very sensitive muscles. And when these right ribs internally rotate, that's what's happening. They're getting tight through the front and lateral part of the rib cage. And then up top, you see the right scalenes. And those scalenes, they go from the neck to the first and second rib, and they are very involved in what we call superior T4 syndrome. And I don't know if that's completely a PRI term, but I think their understanding of it is slightly different than the way that superior T4 was described in the literature earlier, because I think you can find it there. But anyway, those scalenes start to pull the ribs up in attempt to get more, because when your rib cage is down and internally rotated, but your lung is up here, this is where your lung is, your right lung, your big right lung. And that's being compressed when these ribs are internally rotated. And because you need to expand this rib cage to get more air in, because you don't have the left diaphragm anymore, because you're in a pattern, the scalenes and also the subclavius will be involved in trying to pull the ribs up to try to get more air. So to try to get more air, a lot of times you'll see people breathing like this. They're using their neck muscles to pull the rib cage straight up in order to try to get air up into the chest, because the chest is compressed. And one of the muscles that does that is those scalenes, and you can see it's attaching from, I don't even remember, cervical vertebrae, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't even remember. But the thing is they are attaching to that first and second rib, and as you inhale, they try to pull the rib cage, they try to pull the ribs up to try to get more air into a rib cage that's compressed. The problem is they only succeed in pulling the first two ribs up. So superior T4 is when these first two, I think it's just the first two ribs are up and the other ribs are down, and now you've got so When ribs move, the corresponding vertebrae in the back also rotate in the same direction. So when ribs move up, the vertebrae go in that same direction. So now you got an extra twist up through here in your spine, which can be very painful and cause all sorts of issues. But now you've got rib mechanics where some are down and a couple are up, and now you have all your rib cage is all thrown off. And so superior T4 is a really big deal. And usually it's the subclavius that is between the collarbone and the first rib. So here's the first rib, subclavius, the collarbone will be right here, and the subclavius is right underneath there. That usually has to be released. And I have a video about that. You can look it up, subclavius. So all of that has to be turned off, inhibited. That's a lot of muscle right there. And remember, those muscles are activating with every breath you take. So that's a lot of muscles that you are overusing on an everyday basis, 23,000 times a day over many years, because people have been stuck in this pattern for years and years and years. Okay, so now here you see, and it says air goes here because that's just something, part of my educational process for my online clients. Air goes here. I just have it circled. That's where air has to, we're trying to open up those areas with air because it's compressed. But in the back, down by the pelvis, between the pelvis and the rib cage, you see the right QL. Then again, you see the right intercostals. Kind of hiding behind everything, attached to the inside of the right arm. You see that muscle? That's the right lat. Right lats are tight because you are being pulled onto your right side. And then there's extension going on. They hold you into extension. So, big lats look good, but they will hold you into extension and they will kill you. They will destroy your ability to breathe. They also pull the arm down and create shoulder havoc, which then has to be opposed, if you look up further, by the right trap muscle. So right trap muscles often get overactive because they're trying to offset the pull of the overactive right lat muscle. It's a freaking mess. Then you also see in the front here, you got the right pec minor, which attaches to the scapula and then comes down to ribs, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. So right around here, that has to be inhibited. That's pulling the right shoulder forward, disengaging the scapula off the spine, off the rib cage and back. So like they call it scapular winging. So now that throws off all the joint dynamics of that right shoulder. Then you have the right SCM. See, it goes from the sternum and the clavicle. Oh, I only have one head there, but no, I have both. The right SCM travels and then attaches to the base of your spine, the temporal bone. Temporal as in TMJ, TMD, temporal mandibular joint. Temporal mandibular dysfunction is usually a neck issue. It's not usually a teeth issue. So that big right SCM, not only does it attach here, but it starts to pull too much and it can pull your head forward, shift your jaw forward, and now you've got too much right-sided tooth contact. When SCMs are overactive on both sides, they pull your head forward into a forward head posture. Then you can look right in the cheek area. You have the right masseter. That'll get tight. And then that big muscle up here, right temporalis muscle. Look how they just all connect. And that will be tight also. That pulls the right temporal bone into internal rotation. The sphenoid often elevates, and you've got compression going on throughout the whole right side of the head. That's why you see usually the more natural pattern is see a more narrow right side and a wider left side. Well, that's why, because that right side is naturally overactive and pulling the temporal bone into an internally rotated position, which again can then affect the jaw because it is the temporal bone, can affect the position of the sphenoid. So you'll see, often see right eyes that are higher when these things have gone on for too long. And you can say, well, don't those muscles exist on the left side? Yes, they do. But the problem is you don't use them on the left side because you're in that right side pattern. And well, how does that happen? Because the next picture you're going to see is the kicker. There is the diaphragm. So you see the spine in the back, you see the right side, it's labeled, and the left side. Look at how much bigger that right diaphragm is than the left diaphragm. That's a mighty big pull on the spine to the right. All right, both of them both, those are two different muscles. So it's good to have a redundancy in the human body. So if one diaphragm, would one diaphragm make sense? If having just one diaphragm, if something happened to it, you'd be dead because you wouldn't be able to breathe. So redundancy is good. You have two diaphragms. If one gets knocked out of commission, which it can be paralyzed, then the other can still work. You know, if no one used their diaphragm at all, well, then the rib cage probably wouldn't expand. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a good thing. I was just wondering if you could make up for it somehow with other muscles, which you do when you lose your left diaphragm. But I have to look into that. Don't know. At any rate, they both attach to the spine, to the lumbar spine, and they will pull on that spine in a rotational way. So the pull to the right is going to be stronger than the pull to the left. And that's the origin of it. So when that right diaphragm is too overactive, well, it's just active. We lose the left side because of the pattern. And then when you're on that right side for too long, you're using all that right side musculature nonstop. And the problem is you can't use the left side. It's there. And are you using it somewhat? I'm sure you are. But the problem is you're not using it appropriately, and you're using a lot of compensatory muscle instead. So that's why, you know, all those overactive muscles, they have to be opposed. You got to get those left abs back into the game to pull you to the right, along with that left hamstring, that left adductor, left glute medius, and everything else I've talked about in these videos. But the important thing is the idea that you can't just massage these muscles or turn them or just somehow manipulate your way out of tension or tightness on that right side. Because as I was talking with someone else today, inhibition, turning off the right side, opening it up, has to occur with the left abdominals, with the left internal obliques at the same time. Otherwise, you're not shifting to the left. You can't stand on your right leg with all your weight on the right side and then turn off those muscles. That wouldn't make sense because you're stuck in right stance phase of walking. They should be on. You have to put your body, you have to put your pelvis to the left, your rib cage down on the left, simulating a left stance phase of walking, which should enable this right side to let go. So you cannot turn off the overactive right side if you don't have an engaged left side, if you don't have an engaged left side at the same time. So the only way you can really turn off that whole right side is by engaging the left pelvis musculature and the left abdominals at the same time. So everything has to happen at once. And that is a big concept. So left abdominals are a huge part of being able to turn off that overactive right side. Otherwise, that left diaphragm will never get into the game, and your brain will have absolutely no reason to keep you over on the left. It's just going to go right back to the right side, and you're back in that pattern again.